All right, so welcome everybody. We are here with the OD&C, Organization Development and Change Symposia series at the Schmidt-Horst College of Business and our doctoral program in Organization Development and Change. And my name is Steve Cady, and it's really great to have everybody here. We have a few things to share with you about our programs. We have graduate programs in OD&C. Tom Daniels is here. Wave, Tom, say hi. And he's the person that's behind all the good things that are happening with our program. So thank you, Tom, for all your good work. And we have a few things I want to share with you about our programs. We have the Doctorate in Organization Development and Change. It's a professional doctorate program. It focuses on helping people maximize their career mix through thought leadership as they pursue professional joy. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. And we also have a master's program in Organization Development and Change. It's the oldest program, one of the oldest in the world, if not the oldest, as some people would say. Both our programs are AACSB accredited and also by the Higher Learning Commission. And our focus is on this career trifecta, and that is enabling people to manage, lead, consult, and teach, and even research where they want, when they want, with whom they want, making the living they want, as they pursue what matters to them. And you can see more about that on the links on the left over there at the tinyurl.com, kd-joy-book. You can also find out about our programs down below at the DODC at BGSU. So we have a lot of our students here, and we have other guests here, so welcome everybody. And the purpose for today and what we're focused on is bringing evidence-based perspectives to those who are transforming organizations, revitalizing communities, and developing human potential. And when we look at that, this notion of evidence-based perspectives, particularly as we look at the folks in the Doctorate in Organization Development and Change and other people out in the world, there are three areas of work and contribution that people make. They make popular press contributions, they make professional outlet contributions, and academic-oriented contributions. And this can be journals, books, mixed media, and other types of things. I often say that thought leaders make a difference while they sleep. That is, they're creating scalable content around what they care about that enables other people to learn from what they know so that they can do that work in the world and learn from that person who is that thought leader. And so today we're going to focus on one of our emerging thought leaders, and I'll introduce you to him in just a second. Our agenda is, right now we're on the purpose and agenda, and I'll introduce you to Brandon as our keynote speaker. I'll give a little bit of a discussion around that. Then we'll move into small group reflections. And then we'll come back for a whole room Q&A. And I'll talk about the next sessions, which we have somebody really cool coming from the Tavistock Institute to speak to us next month. And more people after that. Yes. So, and now I'd like to introduce you to our emerging thought leader. And Brandon, in our program, our students focus on developing content and submitting it and getting it published. And Brandon is one of those who did that with this article that's been recently accepted for publication. And the title is Agile Engineering, Managing Change to Unleash Innovation. And Brandon's a second-year doctoral student. He is now the Chief Executive Officer of a small consulting firm, Paradoxical Solutions. And he's in a client-facing role, focused on cyberspace engineering workforce development for a federal agency. And prior to that, he worked at Honda R&D in Americas and was responsible for implementing engineering tools for requirements management and agile project management. And that's his niche area, if you will. So Brandon, thank you for making the time to be with us today. And I'd like to turn it over to you so you can share with us your thoughts, and then we'll take it from there and engage everybody else. Brandon?
Thank you, Dr. Cady. And thank you all for being here today. Like, this is very exciting, of course, very, very amped up nerves-wise, but I'm happy to share my thoughts with you today. So, with that, share my screen. Okay, you should see my second monitor right now. Can you all see? Okay.
Yep, we got it.
Thank you. So once again, thank you for your time and for being here today. So As Dr. Katie said, I
Oh,
had a huge achievement, and I received my first publication in ODR, and it was focused on this concept of agile engineering. And also, Dr. Katie helped me with that title, so thank you for that too. But ultimately, I wanted to just share some of my thoughts. This is more of a concept paper, but my thoughts surrounding OD and change as it currently stands, and really how we embrace its interdisciplinary nature and how it can be combined with some other areas. And I think it can really ignite innovation. So once again, OD is going through a very powerful transformation. And the true value of OD, I feel, has been really misunderstood, because I always feel like organizations think OD and they either think that it's a sibling to HR and that its only focus is training and development. And that's always frustrated me, because there's so much more that it has to offer. And I think that we as OD practitioners understand that the role of OD and change is really boundless. And it can extend into many different areas like process engineering, systems implementation, software engineering. So with the changing nature of what OD&C is as it stands today, it brings many questions to mind. How can we anticipate and take advantage of cutting edge research and technology? What tools and processes can be developed and honed to accelerate innovation? What will our future employee or workforce look like? And what skills and abilities will they need to thrive in the workplace of tomorrow? So from once again, an OD&C perspective, I think a lot of times folks think of change management as being more behavioral. And one method that I learned about and has proven to work in my own life is the intentional change theory by Richard Boyatzis. And this concept of intentional change is focused on this model that you see right here. And it's a set of steps that if you go through it, it'll help you to achieve sustainable change. So it starts off by looking at your ideal self. Who are you? Who do you want to be? And keeping that in mind, considering who's my real self? Who am I? From there, discovering what your strengths are, where any gaps lie, and then building a learning agenda that builds on your strengths and reduces some of those gaps. After that, you begin experimenting with new behaviors, new thoughts, feelings through experimentation, and then actually creating and building new neural pathways that help you to achieve mastery. And along the way, you need those trusting relationships that help to support and encourage that change and make it sustainable. So this theory has some parallels to the Tavistock approach, and that embraces Lewinian theory. And also some of the work that's been done by Eric Trist, this concept of socio-technical systems, which has been studied all the way back to the 1940s. And so in that research, I think even then they were embracing this idea of, how can change management or OD be more interdisciplinary? And how can it, I guess there's just some parallels between the social aspects and the technical aspects of things. So on this very note, I think there's great potential for how this concept of intentional or behavioral change can actually be linked to engineering. So on that note, when we think about engineering, most of the time we think about OD and engineering in two completely different spaces, but they're actually quite similar in that the intentional change theory has a very structured process that's been laid out. And with engineering, the model here is the industry standard software development vFlow. And within this, there's kind of a two-prong approach. And from the left side, we consider this specification. And then on the right side, this is more validation. The idea is that Like, let's say you're building a vehicle, right? You're going to start by speccing out the kind of the high level image of what you want that vehicle to be. And then afterwards, you move down the V by beginning to hone in on the specifications that are desired in that specific model. Once you nail those down, then afterwards you begin building, and then you begin validating to ensure that the behavior is what you expected it to be. Ultimately, that vehicle comes out looking and operating the way that we hope when we had that initial image. Maybe it's better. So there's some literature by Hooks and Ferry, and they recommend a process for managing change, ultimately by beginning within engineering, by defining that scope, developing story cases, use cases to understand the desired outcomes. From there, honing in on the inputs and outputs, writing requirements, and then understanding the reasoning behind those requirements, ensuring traceability, right? So where did it come from? And then developing testing methods, developing formats and documents, so some documentation, and then baseline requirements after validating to ensure that it operates the way that you expect. So I find that there's some parallels between the intentional change theory and the V flow, because a lot of it is kind of understanding where your strengths, where your weaknesses are, your gaps, if you will, honing in on those, finding improvement areas, and ultimately then building to the customer spec. Sometimes that's yourself. And what I find interesting is that in the literature, there's a book called Agile Career Development, and it was written by, I believe her name is Mary Bach. She was a consultant for IBM. And she explores this concept of the versatilist, and essentially a person whose knowledge, their insights, and their work experiences are across multiple boundaries. And those experiences can be applied and recombined to fuel innovation. So this idea of versatility within the workplace couldn't be in more demand than it is now. And especially with kind of the after effects of COVID and the way that our work life will shift as a result, gives us a lot of credence. So, Agile, right? So Agile is a methodology that's increasingly being adopted within industries of practice. And once again, it's interesting to note that even this concept of Agile goes back to Millennium theory, as he was one of the first to develop a theory of action research as a respectable form of research within the social sciences. What I like about Agile is that it supports, it's very simple, this Agile mantra. And first and foremost, it focuses on people. It focuses on collaboration as opposed to negotiating, working tools or processes over documentation, and then responding and adapting to change over following a plan. So Agile teams normally have 7 to 10 people, because it encourages all team members to participate and make decisions as a team. And this role of an Agile practitioner is really unique, because even when you link it to the concept of servant leadership, an Agile practitioner would ensure that the team is coming to consensus on many ideas. They'd help to facilitate that decision-making, but really they're in more of a supporting role. They're not the ones making the decisions, but they enable them to happen. They break down barriers. So to dive in a little bit deeper about Agile, because it's fairly misunderstood. A lot of times it's just, people think that it's synonymous with the term lean or synonymous with just one thing, but it's actually more of a tool set. So some of the tools that are most common, you may have heard of Scrum. This is similar to servant leadership, used to eliminate barriers and maintain team progress. XP, which stands for Extreme Programming, and that's pairing members to expedite learning, and reduce errors. This is commonly used in software. Lean, which is focused on eliminating waste through continuous improvement. And finally, Kanban. And this is managing work using a pull system, control workflow. And next to this is my actual Kanban board, which is also behind me. Because as I started researching and writing about this, I found that it was really important for me to use that method myself to develop an understanding. So I made it very simple. It has a list of to-dos, items that are in progress, and items that are completed. So right now, a lot of my to-do items are focused on determining my dissertation topic, completing a literature review, considering conversations that I want to join and contribute to. So kind of things that I don't have an answer to just yet, but I want to think about. And as I get those in progress, for example, today, find a conference for a presentation. Today's checked off the list. Brainstorming my next journal topic. And then any items that are completed, I move. So it's more of a pull system. And within organizations, a lot of times, because of the number of work hours within a week, sometimes it can be time blocked. And maybe you have a limit of 5 that you have in progress at one time. So that pull system makes it effective for organizations to be able to manage workload from person to person. One of the key characteristics is, in terms of iteration, is that both the teams and the customer typically decide on the expectations. And ultimately, it goes back to customer satisfaction with the product. I think Agile works specifically because you're consistently meeting with the client and you're making sure that what's called a minimum viable product. So as you're building something, it's kind of like a painting, right? If you're painting something and you start various watercolors, it may not look like anything at the beginning, and maybe the customer can't really convey what they want. But by you checking in from point to point, it becomes kind of a vision of the two. And maybe it comes out looking like Mona Lisa, but it takes that interaction between the customer and the team in order to be able to build that final result. So I hit on the next slide on accident, but you get the point, right? What if we combine these concepts? So when considering the behavioral aspects of change, the intentional change theory, the structure of requirements engineering and software, and then this concept of agility, I wonder where that could go. I think there's a very significant opportunity to combine the practices of each discipline, and I think it could result in increased speed in organizational learning, therefore innovation. And so there's some relevant literature by Flummerfelt that organizational learning is a critical corporate trait. And typically both agile and lean manufacturing organizations can take advantage of this because it's essential for competitive advantage. So what I did here is, when taking those three viewpoints, I wanted to create a model, a variation of the software vFlow that really capitalized on the strengths of each and how it can result in what I hope would be mastery and innovation. So what you see here is on the left side, similar to defining your specifications. The first phase would be discovery, and that would be determining what the desired change would be, how we should go about it, defining those strengths and gaps. And then as you get to the bottom of the B, defining that learning agenda. So now that we know our strengths and weaknesses, or the areas that we want to improve, what can we do now? Then on the right side, you begin validating, creating those new behaviors in some way, whatever that desired change would be. And then ultimately getting some sort of mastery. So my concept or my model for change management is still a work in progress. But from here, my plan is to research this further and flesh out this model. I'm proud to say I have an agile organization that is willing to allow me to do my dissertation research there. And I'm very excited about the prospect of being able to dig a little bit deeper and see if my hypothesis has any merit. So with that, I thank you for listening today and for your support, and thank you.
Yay, awesome. Brandon, thank you. And so I'm going to talk a little bit, just reflect on a few things. And I'm pulling up my slides right now. So you should see my slide. And do a little reflection on your talk. And then we're going to move into breakout rooms and have you all chat a little bit. So a couple of things that I really like. And I think I go back to, Brandon, I go back to our conversation when we were brainstorming about this. And I'm like, just throw the two words together, you know, right? Agile engineering, right? And then now you've got given a new challenge. So the new challenge is, how do you bring intentional change, behavioral change into agile, into engineering? And what I mean by that is most people who work in technology, software development, and technology implementation. So I would say software engineers, software developers are a little bit different than those people who are implementing legacy systems or transforming their technology systems in the organization. Would you say that there's a difference between software developers and people implementing the software in the organization or bringing in a new technology? Would you see that? Do you have like how you would describe the two when they come together, or what do you see when that happens?
So I apologize, Dr. Katie. I was fumbling around and I missed the first part of your question.
So as you think about software developers and people in organizations who are implementing new technologies, I see those two groups as different groups. Okay, and when software developers adopt this agile approach, and then you bring in a new technology into an organization and begin to implement it and design it and customize it along a large system, the people in the organization have a different reaction to agile than software developers do to agile.
Absolutely. So I look at it from a couple different perspectives, right? From the software developer standpoint, they're likely going to have a bit more understanding of, I guess you could say, what it encompasses, because a lot of times they're adhering to some sort of a method. Software, you cannot implement or even build on it in a vacuum. And that's where you have your folks that are outside that, like your business analysts. Your business analysts are typically the folks that can speak both languages and both. And I think that what they sometimes end up doing is breaking down agile in many cases without even having to explain it. And so they're walking through kind of like that customer acceptance. And if let's say we're implementing a new software and you have the software developers that came out with release 4. You have the business analyst going back to that customer and saying, you know, how does this work for you? How does this oh, I don't like that I have to, you know, make 5 clicks in order to get to this page. Okay. That's concrete user feedback that goes back into that iterative loop.
Right.
And if it's happening correctly, then that's exactly what should be happening. It should be built to what the customer needs, as opposed to, this is what you said you wanted, this is it, a traditional waterfall.
Right. So so what I've noticed as you were talking, it's a great intersection in terms of this notion of agile with the intentional behavioral change or intentional change theory, in the sense that now in an organization, how do I self-manage my change in a new environment as we bring technology in? That's not only going to change the technology that I'm using, is going to change my job requirements, our workflow processes, the way our organization operates, all of that's changing. And I personally now have to adopt agile principles. I have to change my behavior, and we take a collaborative approach, bringing in OD&C and saying, we're going to engage people in creating that solution and being a part of it. So it's better, a user focus, which agile does, which that's an inherent, that respect for people and that engagement is an overlapping value with OD&C. Bringing all those things together is really cool. And so I just love that. And I think you're going to have to figure out how to bring that word into your title now too, maybe, but I like agile engineering. So a couple of things that I wanted to add was in that self-management approach, it's almost like it's the key lever to create lasting change in an organization. Because if people take ownership over their own adaptation and evolving into the new culture that's emerging, if I take ownership of that through the intentional change theory focus, now I have more control over my life. So I think you can bring in stress management, because the more I take and hold on to that intentional change theory, the more control I have, the more ownership. I'm no longer blaming. So you can look at also attributional theory, where you can look at how people look at the change and who are they saying that the change is happening to them, with them, and who's responsible for it. And there's this external locus of control focus. And attribution theory looks at how do we explain why things happen. And if I'm pointing my finger, I'm less likely to take an intentional change, self-managed approach. So I think looking at those theories can help inform you. One of the other concepts that I like is a concept I've been playing with, is this notion of, there's the notion of mutually assured destruction in the world, right? So nuclear war. Your country has a weapon, I have a weapon, we keep each other at bay, we're all safe because we have mutually assured destruction. What you're describing is a different concept. It's mutually assured care, mutually assured engagement, mutually assured, meaning that we take a proactive role to engaging everybody in the system and making sure they have input and making sure they're involved.
I really like that.
Right. And it's right. So, and what's happening, it's cool, because I think what you're setting up with the intersection of these things is you're creating an environment where people take responsibility for engaging each other. There's research and Google has done on teams, what makes for great teams in Google. And if you go look that research up, you'll see that the number one factor that differentiates great teams from good teams in Google is the fact that they make sure everybody on the team speaks up at every meeting. They don't let people go quiet. They don't have one person taking over and talking a lot. They create an agenda that ensures everybody has input. And so it's really, really, I think, important what you are integrating here. So I'll stop there, because I think we have a lot of people here who want to talk with you. So what we're going to do is I am going to, and this was, I was going to speak to this here. I was speaking to this, but I love this model. And what I'd say is, I think this here is helps me quickly to see how you're integrating all these different concepts and how you're moving that original model into a new model, which is your model, which is all about your thought leadership and making a difference while you sleep. Because now that you created this, we got the recording, somebody's going to watch it, you're sleeping one night, somebody's watching your video, they're learning something. So that's exactly what you're doing with your thought leadership. So I'm very, very proud of you for that. And so we're going to go into reflections in the group. So I'm going to open up all the rooms. And I'd like for you all to talk about, as you reflect on our keynote, Brandon, what did you hear? What are your reactions to what you heard? And what questions of understanding do you have? And we'll take about 7 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, but right around 7 minutes for you to have that conversation. I'm going to open up the rooms, and I'm going to recreate the rooms, because some people came and some people, so recreating. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'd like you to go and have a nice conversation for about 7 minutes around these 3 questions. And then we'll come back here and have a wrap-up Q&A with Brandon. So you can all head on your way. Again, the 3 questions are: what did we hear? What are our reactions? And what questions of understanding do we have? and bring those questions back. So as you look on the screen, head on out and have a nice conversation with your group. So Carol, if you could head on out, and Jen, if you want to head to a group and go say hi, that would be great. Awesome. Okay. Tony, if you're here, I'm gonna go and drop in on some groups, and you can if you drop around, you can pause the recording or you can go around. So Jennifer, do you need to go back?
Sorry, yeah, we have to get the questions. I just took a picture.
Oh, I'm gonna broadcast them all to you as well right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm headed back to the room.
Okay, I'll send it to you all right now.
That was exciting.
Awesome. You can pause the recording, or yeah, I think you can pause it. Okay. Keep it recording, and as people are coming back. So yeah, so people will come back in about 20 seconds, as you know, and whether they like it or not, it kind of brings them on back. And then we'll jump in with some discussion here as we bring everybody back. So what were some of your reactions? Any reactions from your conversation?
And we're back. Okay.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to do a fun thing called Chatterfall, and then we're going to have some discussion as well. So my question for you, but don't hit enter. So don't hit enter. The first question I have for you is, and I want you to type your answer again without hitting enter, is what are your reactions? What did you discuss in your group? So just as you were talking in your group, what were some of the reactions that you all had? And don't hit enter. Take about 15 seconds to type a comment, bumper sticker, reaction, sentence or two if you want. All right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hit enter. Boom. All right. So curious to see how the model plays out. Agility application outside OD&C. Love the smashing and merging of concepts and models.
Mm-hmm.
As integration of Agile and OD is universally acknowledged to be needed. Connectivity between Agile and change systems. Wow, concept. So good stuff, good stuff. So let's do the next one, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. And that is, and I'm doing all this for Brandon because Brandon, you can click file all the chat. So we're cataloging things for you. Okay, we're doing a little bit of helpful work for you. The next one is, what is a question you have now? And so don't hit enter, but I just want to kind of get you all to type in that question, maybe the question your group talked about or something that you thought of. So what is that question? And as they type, Brandon, as you are giving the talk today, what's your big question around this? Do you have a big question yourself?
I do. And I was typing it in. What would you recommend for how I can further strengthen my model? Because even as I was going through and explaining, right, I'm like, oh man, like there's so many areas that can be improved to kind of make it more so my own.
Yeah, so that's great. So Brandon, we'll actually have that question, have everybody do that as a chat call. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, boom, hit enter. So there you go. There's lots of questions. So with that, I want to open it up. Who would like to ask a question of Brandon? Who's willing to go? And
can I make one quick shout out? So yeah. My original manager at Honda, the OG, the amazing guy, Scott Husband, is on the line. So I just want to point that out because he was one of the highlights of my career at Honda.
That's great. Awesome. I'm glad Scott could be here with you. That's awesome. Scott, you want to say anything?
No, I'm just excited to see Brandon and some of the work that he's doing. He's always been a thought leader, even at Honda, and I'm excited for him in this program.
Oh, that's great.
It's good to see you too, Steve.
Yeah, you too, Scott. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. All right, so question. So who here's got a question they want to ask? A burning question. And Brandon, you can look at, David will go, and Brandon, you can look at the chat and see questions if you want to answer one too. You can pick your favorite question to answer. So David.
Yeah, Brandon, my question is in there. It's like I was thinking about this in my conversation with Nicole in the transition of many universities are having with online education, and even migrating from one LMS to another LMS, and how do we get everybody on board with these changes? I was thinking, how might this model and process be applied in those situations?
Honestly, I think that, and Dr. Katie hit on it earlier, having kind of like everyone have a say, whatever that implementation might be, I think is really important. But then I think from a personal standpoint, right, not everybody wants to embrace change. That's where the intentional change theory really comes in, because then you can say, even though I don't want to, let me follow a set of actionable steps that can help me to make this sustainable. And it forces you to challenge yourself.
Great.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought it was great that you used the ICT instead of like Lewin's unfreeze, change and refreeze, because I'm going, the more agile we become, the more global warming will take effect in the organization, right? Because we can't refreeze, because by the time we start getting it to refreeze, we're changing it again. So that was part of my comment/question in the chat as well, about the model that you're actually choosing for change and which one you've chosen, because some of them, especially in the agile world, aren't as applicable as they may have been in the past.
You know, it's interesting, Jen, when Lewin wrote about that, he died right as he was writing about that. He wrote about it kind of in passing a little bit, or just kind of as part of some of his writings. And what's interesting is most people will say that it's still relevant, even though, because people need to have some continuity. So enabling structures is a liberating structures concept. How do we create structures that enable people to have some predictability? So how do we take that model, a notion of change, unfreeze, get people open to the new thing, change, and then how do you create enough of some structure and enough of predictability so that people can get their work done while still being open to the change? And I think that's a real interesting notion around that concept. It's kind of a polarity. It's not kind of, it is a polarity, right? Because we need that stability, but we also need that nimbleness. So yeah, so Francis, Dr. Baldwin, you have a question. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, and I think my question is just reframing up the same question we all asking. So what I find, Brandon, is any good model works over a period of time if you continue to perfect it, even though it may not cover everything. But the problem is getting people immersed deeply in it enough so that they know how to use it in different contexts. So you've married two concepts. That's the first thing. And I was talking with Gary about the engineering mindsets. When I've worked with engineers, when they really get what I was trying to do in organization development, when they get it, they got it. However, they get it with an engineering orientation. So there's a right way to do it, and there's this, So I think the question becomes, how do you help plant the essence of this so deeply in the mind of a manager, not just of the practitioner, but an executive who is going to be operating from this pull concept and looking at both the behavioral and the structural systemic in the same breath. Because until they do that, and if they do that, it can cover everything because it's holistic. But to do that is always the challenge I find given that we are all here talking about being practitioners and actually delivering this. So it is no answer, but I think it is the challenge. And I think when you look at Gestalt that you're going to be looking at in the next weeks, Gestalt, what makes Gestalt so holistic is they've taken the behavioral part of Gestalt that they use in therapy and translated into systems development, systems thinking, which covers the whole. And it's the same general concept. So thanks for that.
Yeah, Dr. Bowman. Great thoughts.
So any other questions before we transition? Okay, so in the chat, the next question I have for you is, how can Brandon improve upon his model? What's a suggestion? Anything, how might he, it can be from the title to the model itself to, and you know, what are some things that you would suggest that he might do? Maybe something new he can create, something to address this or to address that. What are some suggestions that you have on how he can improve what he has created? And let's do Chatterfall. Don't hit enter. There's the model. Not sure if it's got this in front of it. There you go. All right, so go ahead now and hit enter. Right. And we got two more gifts for you. So as you read that, what are you seeing, Brandon? What do you, as you look at the chat, some of the comments, are you seeing anything?
Lots of good stuff. So lots of other paradigms or thoughts, different ideas or models to take a look at, as well as keeping it simple. I think that's really good.
And for the last thing, as you all, if you all could, we'll just not do a Chatterfall, and you could put that in the chat. What are some additional concepts? And I'm curious if you all would like to share. Anybody have an additional idea? If I could, Dave Perry, who is going to be, Dave is here. Hey, Dave. If you, David is going to be in our cohort this coming year, fall.
Right.
And so he is, he's also been featured in David Harkin's periodical publication, if you will, that he's got out. And you want to say a little bit about that, David Harkins? And David, you want to share your little cocktail party fact that I thought was really interesting? But David, tell us a little bit about your thing that David Perry published in.
David, sure. It's basically a business blog publication on Medium called the OD&C Factor, and we're incorporating some shorter types of posts and thinking about things that are related to organization development and change. So if you're on Medium or you want to contribute, just pop over there to OD&C Factor and search that on Medium, and there's instructions for submitting an article.
Yeah, David, what did you publish in on his OD Factor?
As part of the consulting work I do, my main client is Stanford Medicine. We read the book Teaming by Amy Edmondson, who is a Harvard professor. And I began to think about what I've done most of my life is brand or branding, and started to think about an active versus a passive approach to teaming, branding. And it's sort of, you'll see it on the OD&C Factor, this frame graphic of how we frame what we do, an active versus a passive stance. And so I kind of leveraged my years of working on various brands, both in Fortune 500s and nonprofits, into the story. And David was very helpful. I learned very early on as a fraternity brother of David's an undergraduate, just do what he says and you'll fare pretty well in life. So his suggestion was to apply to the DOD&C program. And I think I'm really going to appreciate that advice. The cocktail story is I currently live in Salt Lake City, Utah. And in 2001, a group of software developers who were living the waterfall world. I was at Microsoft for 10 years. We launched products every 3 years, and Apple began to eat our lunch every 18 months versus 36 months. So we learned quickly how to do something. They met at Snowbird Resort. I would highly recommend it for skiing here in Utah. And they created the Agile Manifesto. And a gentleman that was a part of that at a distance was a guy named Jim Ewell, who worked with me for years at Microsoft. And he has just released a book called The 6 Disciplines of Agile Marketing. I sent it to Brandon and a few others. It came out this year. He's applying it at one of my clients, Doxy.me, which is a telehealth company, and they've seen 50 to 100% improvement in project flow and in employee engagement. So I do think it works. I think it's a principle. Brandon, you're on to something. It's applicable to other industries outside of software development, obviously. And it's like serendipity. I was thinking the other day, I probably could apply this to some of my org consulting I'm doing with Stanford and University of Louisville and some of my other clients. So very timely. I appreciate being able to see your presentation, and I wish you the best. I think you're onto something pretty powerful. So
thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So as we wrap up, Brandon, thank you for the work that you're doing on this. Again, as I said, you are making a difference while you sleep now. Your recording will go out. People will be citing you. They will be able to reference this. We'll be able to do that thought leadership in a way that is very impactful. So I'm very proud of you. In addition, I think you all may have got a sense of this. Brandon brought evidence to his conversation today. There are popular press books, there are professional books, and there are academic books. There are popular press articles, professional articles, and academic articles. Thought leaders play in all three arenas. They make sure evidence is always a part of what they share. And Brandon, you did that really well today. So thank you, Brandon, for your good work. And we will be meeting again. Let me show you here. I think in our next thing we have here, we have future sessions. We have our monthly symposia that I want to make sure you know. The fourth Wednesday of every month at noon. And that fourth Wednesday is a time when we share the leading thought leaders, emerging thought leaders, ideas related to transforming organizations, revitalizing communities, and developing human potential. And that's what our DOD&C program is focused on. And it's all about professional joy, doing what you want, where you want, with whom you want, making the living you want. And we've got a great group of people here. So thank you all. Bye for now, and we'll see you next month.